Welcome back to Plating Profit. I'm Stephen Bonin, founder of Chef Plus Strategic Bookkeeping and Financial Advisory for the F&B industry. If you're running a restaurant, a cafe, a catering operation, a bakery, or anything in between, and you're tired of working hard and wondering where that money went, you're in the right place. This is episode 4. Let's jump in. A warm everything sourdough bagel landed on the table in front of me, and you could just tell it was made in-house. The crust had a slight crackle, and it smelled like something that had been proofed overnight and was actually cared about. Before I took a bite, I asked the owner sitting across from me, "What would happen if you took a week off?" And she laughed, not because it was funny, but because she genuinely couldn't picture that cafe running without her. It was a scratch kitchen with a unique menu, and everything on the board reflected her taste, her instinct, her standards, and regulars drove out of their way for it on a daily basis. You could feel the intention and love in every dish, but every sauce, every special, every detail about how a plate should leave the pass lived in her head, not on paper, and nowhere a new hire could find it at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday when she wasn't there. And it wasn't just the food. She'd become the person the customers came for, not just for what was on the menu, but who was in the room, providing the experience, the welcome, the warmth, all of her. She hadn't just built a cafe, she'd made herself impossible to replace. And it wasn't a compliment, this is a trap. Here's where most operators misread what I mean by recipe standardization. They hear micromanagement, they hear clipboards, rigid systems, line cooks being told they can't be creative, and that's not at all what I'm talking about. I've heard operators describe regulars checking who's in the kitchen before they place their order. Not out of curiosity, but because that dish depended on who was making it. Was it the generous cook that meant extra cheese and extra protein on their nachos? Or that different cook that meant the crust of the pizza comes out overcooked and a little bit darker than you would like as the owner? The regulars have figured out something the owner hasn't fully reckoned with. The product depends on the person and not the operation. And when that's happening, you don't have a menu, you have a collection of individual performances, and you cannot scale a performance. I have to say this clearly because a good portion of you listening aren't running kitchens. If you run a cheese shop, a butcher counter, a fine food retailer, this is your episode too. In your business, the recipe isn't a batch card. It's the greeting at the door. It's the way the staff member tells a story of the producer. It's whether every customer walks out feeling genuinely taken care of, or whether that experience is a lottery depending on who they happen to talk to that day. One employee is warm and generous. One is all business and a little short. One is too chatty and completely reading the room wrong. It's not a personality problem, it's a systems problem. Your best staff person has the script hardwired. The question is whether that script is written down anywhere, or whether it just lives in that person's head. So let me put a number on the drift, because this is where it becomes a financial conversation. So say you're running a protein heavy dish. Your recipe calls for 150 grams of whatever protein per plate. And you have 3 different cooks online on a Saturday night. One follows the recipe and it's 150 grams bang on. One eyeballs it and probably, let's say, it's about 165 grams. One is generous and wants to make sure the customer's happy and is putting 180 grams, maybe more, on the plate. So let's say it's 8 cents per gram for mid-range protein and 80 covers that night. That average 20 gram variance is about $128 in food cost. 1 shift and 1 item. Over a week, that number moves closer to $400. Over a month, that's $1,600, and over a year, it's nearly $20,000 in variance. From one dish, from one line, because of no standardization. Nobody stole anything and nobody was careless. They just didn't have a system. And that food cost that keeps running at 2 or 3 points higher than it should, it's built on one generous scoop at a time. If we move away just from financial, a lot of F&B owners talk to me about work-life balance in the industry. And let me be direct about this as well. It's not a scheduling problem, it's another systems problem. You're busy is everyone else's off time. Saturday nights, Sunday brunches, long weekends. I'm not going to tell you that changes. You know the deal. You signed up for this. But what can change is how many of those shifts require you specifically to be there. The honest thing operators admit when you press them, it's just faster to do it yourself than to stop and train someone else. And in the short term, 100% true. Training takes time. Writing things down takes time. Watching someone do it wrong over and over before they get it right takes patience. And patience is not something you always have when the room is full. But like I said, that's short-sighted. It may take more time up front to show someone properly how to do it than to just do it yourself. But once you've written down the standard and trained to it, that person can train the next person. The only delegation that actually travels, where your standards go with your staff even when you're not watching, is in documentation. You write it down once, you train to it, and the operation earns the right to breathe without you. So what does getting it on paper actually look like? There are 3 questions. Question 1, what does it look like when it's done right? A photo, a finished product, a short description, how you want the plate, the drink, the floor to look, how you want the bathroom cleaned after a rush. If you can photograph it or describe it in 2 sentences, then you can standardize it. Number 2 is, what does it take to make it? And this is where you need exact quantities, to grams, to counts, to milliliters, not a handful, not to taste. This is where your financial control lives. And every time a measurement drifts, you're writing a check that you didn't sign. And the final is, how does it get communicated to the customer? For kitchens, that's the plating standard and the ticket flow. For a product business, it's the 2 or 3 things every staff member can say about what you sell. The greeting, the recommendation, how to read a browser versus a buyer. Your best employee has all of this hardwired, like I said. The question is whether anyone else does, and whether it's written down everywhere. The list gets long quickly, and that's the point. The more of it that lives on paper, the less of it lives only in you. That cafe owner that made genuinely exceptional food, the vision behind it was real. Customers could feel it, and that's rare. But right now, it's entirely dependent on her being there. If she gets sick, the quality drops. If she takes a vacation, she'll spend it on her phone. The moment those systems come off the pass and onto paper, that moment, what lives in her head becomes something that the whole team can use. The whole business changes. Not the quality will stay. That's the whole point of writing it down. What changes is who can deliver it. A business where only the owner can execute the vision is not a business, it's a job. And you become a cost of goods of that business, not the business owner, a cost of goods that goes into making the product. That's what the R in the profit framework is all about. It's about control, it's about freedom. We call it recipe standardization, but really what it is allowing you to have some freedom. You need to document your standards, you need to train to them, and the operation earns the right to run without you for a shift, then for a day, then a weekend. This is when F&B starts to feel like something you built and not something that owns you. I built a really cool SOP creator that you'll find in the description of this that you can use, click on, and create your first SOP. It's very straightforward. It takes you step by step in how to create your first SOP, something, your standard operating practice, some documentation that you can hand to your staff. The first one might not be perfect, but that's fine. You're going to have plenty of opportunities to make documentation. Start with something simple that you describe every day and just write it down and see what it looks like. See how easy it is to move it from your brain to a piece of paper. And if any of this landed, please check out thechefplus.com and take the free profit diagnosis. It's 20 questions, takes about 3 to 5 minutes, and you'll leave knowing exactly where your margins are going. I'm Stephen Bonin. I have 30 years of F&B experience and 10 years of being a double-digit profit margin maker in my own restaurant. And this is an episode of Plating Profit. I really appreciate you taking the time to check it out, and I'll see you in the next one.